Good evening, everyone. My name is Shun Kong, and I'm the host for tonight's program. I hope everyone is well and safe, and please avoid going out or roaming around. Always remember to wash your hands and avoid touching your face when you are outside, and most importantly, stay at home. These broadcasts are brought to you by our fellow JPO members and some of the world's greatest musicians that wishes to share their knowledge and help aspiring musicians through their musical journey. We are also providing opportunities for everyone with different interests to learn not performance but transferable life skills. We are doing a series of program because JPO thinks this will be able to help in uplifting the spirit of everyone in this long period of lockdown. If you have any questions to ask, please type them down in the Q&A below. Our guest speaker tonight is double bassist Foo Yin. Foo Yin initially began as a classical guitarist, but the desire to play in an orchestra led to him transitioning to the double bass. He holds a Master of Arts in Classical String Performance from the Irish World Music Centre, Limerick, Ireland. At the IWMC, he studied bass with Duncan McTeer and chamber music with Maurizio Fuchs, Bruno Jurana, and Ferenc Such. He also studied bass with Miloslav Gajdoš in Komarys in the Czech Republic and Peter Berkop in London, England. His orchestral experience includes 20 years with the Malaysian Philharmonic Orchestra as a pioneering member, the Asian Philharmonic Orchestra in a one-off event, Irish Chamber Orchestra, Singapore Symphony Orchestra, and the Calgary Philharmonic Orchestra. After leaving the orchestral life, he turned to his other love, jazz. He is grateful to have been able to learn from pillars of jazz scene in KL, which includes Michael Virapan, Don Guezzo, and Rachel Guezzo. having had the good fortune to be able to play with a few solo well-known jazz soloists was a privilege and high point to his jazz journey. At present, he plays with and helps to manage Camerata Kuala Lumpur, a string ensemble, and would like to focus more on jazz with appearance with various musicians in KL. Without further ado, we would like to invite Foo Yin Hong.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Foo. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you
for... All right, so first of all, the recording is exceptional. Thank you for bringing us such a beautiful performance. So Foo, can you please share a little bit more on the video that we have watched just now?
You mean the performances, huh?
Yeah, the performance.
Yes, the first piece is actually written by a bass player, because we bass players, we don't get much repertoire, so we have to write our own. It was written by Francois Rabath, French bass player, and he's very well known with his unique technique. So he wrote this called Pucha Das, and he has performed this with tabla as well. So that's an unaccompanied piece. The first piece, it involves the open sound of the bass, the tuning of the bass. Right. And then the second piece is actually a Hofmeister concerto, which I played in Viennese tuning. Viennese tuning is a little bit different from the conventional bass tuning, which we are tuned in fourths. But the Viennese tuning, we are tuned in the mixture of third and fourths. And we get a very nice resonant. So that was something that I did a few years back at Jesselton Philharmonic. And of course, the jazz big band, I was fortunate enough to be able to join Julian Chan, a well-known saxophone player. He started a big band, and he was looking for a bass player who could read a little bit. So I took the opportunity to join his big band. And so those were the snippets that I was a part of.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah.
So among string instruments, there are actually like more prominent string instruments, as we know. Everyone will call violins or cellos, or some call big violins. But among of all the very prominent, very famous string instruments, so what made you choose the double bass?
Yeah, I always get asked a lot that question. I stated in the bio that you put up, I started with classical guitar. And, and then while still studying guitar, I went to watch a concert by the Long Island Youth Orchestra. This was back in the mid-80s, 1980s. So they came and they gave a performance, and I was just blown by the sound of the orchestra. So I told myself I wanted to play an orchestral instrument. So the most natural transition from guitar is to the bass, because the bass is tuned in the same way as the guitar.
Yeah, it's also tuned in fourth, right?
Yeah, except for the
last two strings.
Last two strings. So I did that, and I joined a program organized by the Ministry of Culture then, which gave free lessons, and then we got to play with the orchestra there. That time it was called Orchestra Sinfoni Muda, started by Datuk Fatah Karim. So I started off like that.
All right. So you know how like we musicians often get like bottleneck, and at certain stages we tend to stop developing, and because due to like technical difficulties. So I've seen you have like exceptional skills, and you have like really good cross strings, and it's just amazing. So like I really wanted to know, like, how did you study and improve to break through these bottlenecks? Like, were there any guidance from teachers, or like you just practice a lot by your own?
Yeah, I started off pretty much by myself, although I had there was only just one teacher at that time. He was an Italian expat, but I still felt I wasn't able to progress. So I did continue practicing on my own diligently, but felt I was still a bit stagnant. So I started going to Singapore for lessons. A colleague of mine recommended a teacher in Singapore. I went to Singapore. I used to travel the night train from KL, and then slept on the train, arrive Singapore in the morning and have my lesson, and then take the train back at afternoon train back. So because I couldn't afford to stay in Singapore. So I did that, and then in the early 90s I saved some money, went to London to take lessons from a well-known teacher who I studied with later also for my master's, Duncan McTeer. He basically changed, I would say changed my life. I owe him much.
All right. So like in Singapore, right? So may I know that may I know that like who was your teacher there in Singapore?
Her name is Karen Yeo. She's still there now with the Singapore Symphony Orchestra, and she was the next student of Duncan McTeer as well. So I was sort of in a good lineage, I guess. So So I'm also like wondering. So like, is there any difference in terms of like musical performance, let's say trend or something, like compared to what you get in Singapore and what you get from London? Because you know how, from my understanding, like a lot of Asians, like Asians musicians, they tend to focus more on like technical skills, like being able to play very fast and those kind of like skills, showing off things. But then like I've seen like how these like maybe Europeans or like foreigners, maybe in the UK, they tend to focus more on the musicality, like how you express the music, which to me is like it is something very different from what we are taught. So do you see like this as a trend in general? Yes, I do agree with you to a certain extent, but there are quite a handful of people, local Malaysians, who do pay attention to the musicianship. True. But yes, you're right. The general trend is to get your technique right and then pass exams, which is not entirely a bad thing. But there is the side of making. Because I feel as musicians, we are in the business of we are tone smiths, right? Our job is to make sense of the notes that we are playing, to make them mean something, rather than just notes that we play, albeit very precise and in tune and all that. But there's the other side of music making. So I think that I learned a lot from my teacher in London. He always say things like make every note lead from somewhere or it's going from somewhere, coming from somewhere. Make every note mean something. Every note must be phrased off nicely, things like that. So I mean, that's just brushing the tip of the iceberg, of course. I think there might be truth to that there's a trend that people are just focusing on technique, which is not entirely bad, because technique gives you the facility to play, right? So if now people can just focus a bit more on the musicality part of it, then I think we'll all be a better place. True. So like when you went to study with Duncan in UK, did you do it as a full-time music student or just taking like private lessons? I started off with taking private lessons, because I couldn't afford the full fees of the degree course in London. It's very high. So I was lucky because my uncle was there and I didn't have to pay accommodation. So I just had to save up on the fees, which wasn't too cheap at that time. Even at that time, back in the early 90s, it was like £70 per lesson. So what do you study then, like at that stage? A lot of technique, for sure. Yeah, because we need the facility to be able to maneuver this big instrument efficiently. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I thought I was at a certain level, but when I went to this teacher, Duncan, he just fixed all my basic problems, and at that time it felt like a little bit, how to say, grudgingly that I did it because it was just boring. But now I just feel all the benefits to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I was wondering also, like, did you bring your bass all the way from Malaysia with you to?
Oh, no. I didn't have a good instrument then, and just too expensive to have travel with the bass. He very kindly lent me his bass for free for long periods, sometimes 3 months at a time. So yeah.
All right. Okay. So I'm also very interested that, like, in your professional life as an orchestral musician. So, like, can you talk a little bit more about your life as orchestral players?
Yeah. I had a good fortune to be able to be a part of the Malaysian Philharmonic Orchestra for 20 years or so. When the orchestra started in '98, it was still very, very new and very exciting. There's only 4 of us Malaysians. The first rehearsals were very intense, and I think for a good 5 years after that, it was very hard work because the new music director was trying to build a sound that he believes in, and I believe that he achieved very well that goal that he had. So back then, we just had to practice and prepare weekly all the repertoire that is given to us. We know the program much in advance, so we would take the music that we think would give us the most problems. Different parts of the orchestra have different challenges for each repertoire. So so I would take music and learn it and prepare for each rehearsal as though it's the first rehearsal, as though it's the performance. We have to be really prepared. So that's basically, in a nutshell, the life of an orchestral musician.
So you must be very lucky, like, to be able to audition and, like, get into the NPO, because I'm not sure, like, is it that competitive back then, back in your times?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, the reports were saying that there were like 1,500 people worldwide who auditioned. But I would like to say that I speak for myself. Right. Yes, I think I was lucky. Of course, I did work for it, but I think lucky is also part of it. Because at that time, to be honest, I didn't have enough orchestral experience compared with the foreign musicians. That's for sure. But the chance to learn with the colleagues in the orchestra during those, at least, especially those first 5 years, was really good. I learned so much from my colleagues then, and to be able to play that repertoire, the vast repertoire that is part of the orchestral repertoire, is such a privilege, and in a way, it's an honor as well.
So is the NPO like your first professional orchestra that you have joined?
No. I mean, my ambition was just to play in a professional orchestra as a professional musician. So my first job was actually with the City Hall DBKL Orchestra.
Okay.
So that was my very first job, and then I went to the National Symphony when the National Symphony started in '93, '94, I think. Okay. So so I guess NPO was my third job.
It was your third. All right. So like, what do you think of, like, each of them? Like, maybe how do they differ in terms of, like, the atmosphere of, like, practicing, and maybe, like, interpretation in terms of pieces of the conductors?
Yeah, I mean the the City Hall Orchestra is a different orchestra. It's a more of a pop orchestra, so they have different ways of working and different goals to meet. So the National Symphony, of course, is nearer, closest to the MPO. So I think when National Symphony started, we were trying to be the orchestra, the main orchestra in the country, of course. But with the existence of MPO, that was a little bit, how should I say, stunted a little bit. I think what the NSO has achieved over the years is also quite impressive. They've grown from that time when I was playing with them to today. Of course, the level of musicians in Malaysia in general, and especially in KL, has improved. There are more bassists, there are more viola players, there are more cellists. During my time, we never had enough cellists in KL. We had to get from Penang and sometimes even from Bangkok.
Is it? Okay. So so I do wonder, like, among like all these performances that you had joined or you have performed, so like, is there any performances that are like really special to you or perhaps very memorable to you?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind are orchestral. Actually, there's probably two actually. One is when we Malaysian Philharmonic went on tour to Australia. I forgot which piece by Ravel that we played, but it was not obviously an orchestral piece. That wasn't in the best acoustics in the Sydney Opera House. Sydney Opera House, to be honest, it doesn't sound too good. It looks fantastic, but it doesn't sound too good. But we had really good concerts in Sydney Opera House and also in Australia in general. And also, I remember the time when we had a guest conductor, Lorraine Mazel, a very famous conductor that came. I think he was in Singapore, but we somehow managed to invite him to come to KL to conduct the MPO. And to be able to experience his conducting and his musicianship, it's just unforgettable.
So those with the MPO. How about the NSO or the BKL Orchestra?
I can't think of anything that is very memorable then, but I don't take those experiences lightly. I mean, they were part of my growth. So I appreciate the BKL as much as I appreciate the MPO in different ways.
So like, is there any very challenging experiences, like from what you remember, like any very challenging part for you?
Any what, sorry?
Like very challenging experiences to you.
Challenging, huh? I think because I can't pinpoint one because there were too many.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, maybe this incident, I think it was the first year in MPO. We haven't given full concerts yet. We were rehearsing some repertoire. But we would play parts of like, let's say, the first movement of a symphony. And I remember, I think it was a Bruckner symphony that we were playing. We were playing the first movement. I think it was like in the middle or somewhere. The lights in the hall just went off. But the orchestra kept playing for a good, I think a good 15 to 30 seconds. Maybe it doesn't sound long to you guys, but for us,
definitely. It is really professionalism.
I mean, it's not to be classified as the most challenging, but it was quite challenging in that
situation. Definitely. So, how musicians sometimes we need to be like impromptu. We need to know what to do at the moment where any unforeseeable circumstances came out. Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
So yeah, like since you started in a classical music background, so what had made you take up jazz music?
Yes. I I I think jazz is America's greatest gift to the world. I always feel like the sound that is classified as jazz, especially the standards, tunes
Yeah,
and songs from the 30s and maybe even 1920s, right up to 1950s. Uh, those tunes are just very special. The harmonic progression, the composers who wrote, Gershwin.
yeah,
I just can't think of just so many jazz composers, people who wrote tunes for musicals were also in the jazz vein, I think. So I think those music were the greatest, one of the greatest gifts that America has given the world. And also, secondly, I think the sound of jazz is really related and linked to the double bass. I can't think of a really jazz sound that is not that does not include the double bass. Of course, there are groups who played with the electric bass, and they are fantastic, and the bassists are great. But for me, the sound of the double bass defines the sound of jazz as we know it in the traditional terms, if I may say that. Yeah. So I've always enjoyed all those tunes, and one of the genres I really enjoy playing a Brazilian jazz, from bossa novas to sambas and all that. But bossa novas has a certain special place in my heart. So the desire to delve in that repertoire made me want to learn how to do it. And also, I did try learning jazz many years ago, and always failed. Not to say I'm succeeding now, but at least I'm getting the hang of it. I can, play through a song with a jazz band, but of course maybe not the best way, but I can do it. So I just wanted to be a part of that before, I cannot play anymore. So I think I wanted to be a part of that sound process for the jazz sound. For me, sound is my what do you call that? My pet peeve, or my main thing that I want to aim for or enjoy. So that's the reason I'm trying to learn jazz.
So like, would you say not only the style, but also like the techniques of playing bass are also like very different when you're playing jazz music versus classical?
Yeah, not the physical technique though. It's more the mental. Because in classical we are so trained to read and to read accurately what's in the score, and also to when we make notes as to what the conductor wants, or when we are preparing some solo pieces, what we want to do, we try to follow that game plan, so to speak. Whereas jazz is a free art, right? I mean, that's the way I see it. It's where everybody has equal say. As you know, in jazz combos, when you go to a jazz gig, everyone gets a chance to solo. Everyone gets a chance to say something. Whereas not so much in the classical world. Also, it's a more intimate music making process. I think, much like in the classical world, chamber music is, but you play off each other. I think not just the vibe, but also from notes that the pianist chose some language to play, certain notes to play, and if you click well with the pianist, and what comes out, if you click, is another level of experience, I think. So yeah, the difficulty is the improvisation aspect of jazz. Yeah, I struggle with that really hard. I'm still struggling with it. Yeah, and I've been told many times, and I've learned nowadays we got so much material from YouTube and all that. Is to listen and transcribe. So that's one thing I want to do more, to listen more and transcribe the jazz language. Yeah. So hopefully I can succeed a little bit better in months to come, years to come.
I'm sure you will be able to do it. So like another thing that I noticed are the strings that they are used in the strings that they use in jazz. Like, is it? I think they are very different, right? Because like the tensions are definitely different from classical and jazz.
Yes, there's if you want to get the jazz sound, you cannot. Well, you can, of course, but it's not ideal to use orchestral strings, because orchestral strings are a little bit darker and a bit heavier, because we use the bow to play. Whereas with jazz strings, you need something that has a little bit more growl to it, a little bit more projection when you pluck it. Because most of it is plucked. So yes, there are a variety of jazz strings that you can buy. And of course, we don't use the orchestral strings. So they are built very different from each other.
Yeah, in terms of the sound it projects and the how it's going to play. It's definitely going to be different, right? So like, what about the instruments, like the double bass itself? Is there any difference of like how the instrument itself is?
The basic instrument is the same, but you know, when you go and choose a certain instrument, that instrument maybe plus the strings that we use, if it gives the sound that you want, back to the concept of sound again. If that's the sound that you want as a jazz bassist to contribute to the band, then that might be the right bass for you. So that's also very personal. You know, a German-made bass might be good for orchestra, whereas I have a French-made bass, and it's quite suitable for jazz, but it's also great for orchestral work as well. So it's a bit subjective. But for the people who know violin instruments, string instruments, we may set up the bridge a little bit different from orchestral. So maybe a little bit flatter, so it's easier to pluck, but not that much different. But maybe it's just slightly less curved.
So for you, like you personally, do you have any, like, do you keep like different basses for like preference of classical? Maybe you use this for classical and the other one for jazz.
I wish I had. If I could, I probably have three. I should have three basses, maybe four. But I know I only have one. So maybe the next few years I may get one just for jazz. We'll see. But I only have one, unfortunately.
Right. So another question is like, as a well-seasoned musician in both classical and jazz scene, like, can you talk a little bit about like what's the major difference between jazz and classical music in general?
Like I said, the improv aspect of it, that's the major difference. The hardest thing for me was to learn to play without looking at music, you know. So because we're so ingrained to look at it and follow it, but we use our ears differently in the classical world, I think. Not as much or differently as jazz musicians do. I'm impressed with people who musicians in the jazz world that know the form so well, and you know, they just know it so well. I think it's very much second nature to them. So it was, and I would say still is, a struggle for me to really let go of visual part of playing jazz. So I think once I get to that level where I no more rely on visual and more of ear and what I hear, then I think I would have achieved some sort of success. Because one aspect of jazz playing I learned is that it's also about reacting the harmonies that let's say the pianist play. You know, tonight he may play different chords, different versions of the chord, the basic chord. Tomorrow he may do some substitutions here and there. So if we can learn to hear that sound of different chords, you know, the difference between a dominant 7 flat 5 and dominant 7 flat 13, you know, for example, things like that, then I think it helps.
So like, I guess it's kind of, although I do understand like the improvisation part is like it's very difficult, definitely, and you do admit that it's one of the most challenging part for you. But I guess I think it is quite open. It's like an open-ended question. There's no answers, like there's no straight answers to it, right?
Well, the answer to learning that is just to transcribe, really. For jazz, and bottom line is transcribe. Listen to the music that it becomes part of your psyche or your language, you know. So that when you play, you are speaking language. That's what I've been hearing from different sources. That the language is the key to playing jazz. Although it's a simple line, simple concept, so to speak, simple, but it's actually quite a lot to do to master that, I think.
Okay. So so lastly, what do you think of the JPO and the activities that currently we are doing right now?
I was reading about it. It reminded me of the Venezuelan music program El Sistema. Yours, the Jesselton program is very much like that. I think I'm very impressed, especially your objective to register as an examination board that will not charge fees for people, for the not so well-to-do to take exams. So I think that's really good. I'm very impressed with what Yapling is doing, and I wish you guys success.
Thank you so much. So moving on, we will have the Q&A session. Let's see if there is any Q&A coming in. Okay, so the audience did ask, so do you set up your bass in like differently each time when you do like classical and jazz music?
At the moment, I can't really change much, because unless I cut another bridge that is for jazz, I mean, I can do that, but it's a little bit I don't have that practice yet now. I just make do with the setup that I have for both, because I'm sort of in midway between a really hardcore orchestral setup and a hardcore jazz setup. So it's between the two.
Okay, so another question is that I knew that you have been to PMF. Like, would you like to share with us some of your fond memories there?
I actually have not been to PMF. I don't know where that news got to. No, I auditioned for it, but I didn't get in. So I was just accepted into the Asian Youth Orchestra, which is not as good as the PMF. So sorry.
So okay, another audience had asked that I heard that you are taking up double bass making during this pandemic. Like, can you tell us like what made you decided to do so?
Well, mainly partly because I had nothing to do. There was during the pandemic, there's no work as a musician.
True.
Mr. Ong Kiat Wei from Ong Luthier was kind enough to try to teach me something about the bass making. Actually, I've not done bass making itself thus far. More bass repair and restoration, which I guess I think Mr. Ong would correct me, but I think it's part of restoration is part of bass making as well. I mean the skills that you learn. So I also like woodworking. So when you've got nothing to do and there's a chance to work with wood, why not? And also the interesting thing about working and learning from Mr. Ong is that he's very good with sound adjustment, and we both have this how should I say target to get the best sound possible from the instrument. So what he has been able to do with just by knocking the sound poles and adjusting the bridge, it's quite amazing, and also how the sound changes if you want more this sound and that sound. So that part has been quite interesting as well.
So definitely we do see some like optimization with a little bit of like tweaking here and there. So I guess definitely it's very nice to pick up like repairing or maintenance skills, right?
Learn a new skill.
Right. So for the next question, the audience asks, is it true that jazz you don't use so much of your bow for alcohol, because most of the time you'll be plucking strings?
That's true. But there are a lot of jazz giants, bassists who use the bow when they solo. It's just to get the phrasing like a horn player's phrasing. I mean, greats like the present day greats like Christian McBride, he uses not so much, but yes, he uses bow. John Clayton and the older generation, Ray Brown doesn't use much bow. I know Paul Chambers who played famously with Miles Davis in the landmark recording Kind of Blue. He uses quite a lot of bow for his solo. So for those of you who are interested, you should check out Paul Chambers.
Great. So moving on to the next question. So the audience say, thanks for sharing, and could you also recommend some good double bass rosin?
Rosin, I feel also is a very personal thing. There are the three types of rosin that is mainly used by professionals. There is the Pops rosin. I think they're from US. There is the Nyman, N-Y-M-A-N. I think they're from Sweden. And there's another rosin which I can't remember the name now, which I think is also from Europe. I don't like Pops because it's a little bit too sticky in our weather. But a lot of people like it because it makes gripping the strings easier. But I find that you can't get much different color from sticky rosins. So my teacher used to use actually violin rosin for his solo performances. But I would recommend personally, from my personal experience, Neiman rosin.
So how do you tell if like the rosin is good for you, and is it just solely based on the sound, or is there anything else that you look for?
Sound, the sound and how it grips for you, the way you play it. So like I said, it's a personal thing. So you have to try it, I guess. But these are the three main ones that people use. So Pops, Neiman. Sorry, I can't remember the third one at the moment. My brain is not working.
But then, so it's, I think like how rosins, they also varies from the humidity or the weather of the country that we play in general. How about the weather? Does the weather also affect it like very slightly also?
it affects the instrument.
Yeah,
There are times when it's rainy outside and my instrument just sounds so soft and dead. And sometimes when the weather is a bit more okay, then it sounds better. Same with the rosin as well. So if you're playing in an air-conditioned place that's very cold, also the bass sounds different and the rosin works differently.
Yeah.
So we musicians go through a lot of different factors that affect our performances.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, okay, so moving on to another question. From the audience, they ask what advice would you give to someone who are keen to take up the double bass if that person is a lady which is small in size?
What advice? I guess first thing you you must really want to play the bass. You must really enjoy the sound. Otherwise, you have to carry an instrument that's big. It can be a little bit discouraging or daunting for a small size person, maybe. But on the other hand, the love for the instrument might grow over time. So I'd say if you can take up the bass, if you have a way of borrowing an instrument or renting an instrument, try it out for 3 months or so. Then if you feel like you're really growing to like it, then try to invest in an instrument that is right for your size. I can't go into the specifics of the size for what height and all that now, but I would say I think most instruments that are on sale in the market are suitable for most size people. We just have to, at least for the beginning stage. Of course, when you go into more challenging repertoire, when you play solos and stuff like that, then the actual size does affect your performance on it.
So, I do have another question that comes up from my mind. This is my personal question. So I do wonder, like, do you think the size of the hands or maybe the length of the finger, how big hands can play easier? Like, do you think this is one of the very major factors also in terms of like how easy we can play the instrument?
Yeah, of course. I think it does help. But when you see Peter Buckle, who I studied with, and of course Duncan McTeer too, but Peter Buckle was somehow his fingers was huge. I mean, for him to play one tone, it's much easier than for me even. I'm 5'10"-ish. I'm 5'10"-ish. But on the other hand, you can see online now so many petite female bass players from Korea and Taiwan and China, and even from Europe, of course. But I say those countries in Asia because they are a little bit smaller than Europeans in general.
Right.
But they maneuver on the bass very well. They're fantastic players. So I think if you get the right tuition, right training to help you how to maneuver an instrument like a double bass, then the size not so much of a problem, I think.
I see. All right. So for the next question, so Fu, can you please share with us about the Camerata that you are currently managing? Is there what are the plans for the near future?
Camerata Kuala Lumpur was set up originally by me and Encik Nasran Nawi, and also my former colleague from MPO, Ergus Koni, to just want to delve into string music, string ensemble music, which is rarely done. I mean, even MPO over the 20 years, I think they did maybe less than 5, string music. But there's a vast repertoire in the string ensemble library. So we just want to promote that. So the latest development for us, excitingly, is that we have been appointed the resident ensemble for UCSI University.
Yeah.
So it's a 3-year agreement where we will do concerts there, and this is fully, the hall is fully sponsored by UCSI. We will conduct workshops there, workshops, lectures, and whatnot, and working with the other lecturers there, maybe to play some solos and outstanding students as well. So that's for the future. We are working on cleaning up our admin side. It's not been very well, so that we can hopefully get some more professional way of doing things. Like hiring musicians and planning a more varied program. But the main issue we want to deal with is actually hiring musicians, because for most part now that we've been in existence for the last 2 years, most of the musicians have been playing for free. So we want to change that in the years to come, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure a lot of people will be looking forward to it. Yeah, I think that's all for tonight. Yeah, so thank you for your time, Fu.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, so on behalf of JPO, we would like to thank you everyone for dedicating your time and energy into this interview despite the pandemic that's happening right now. We would also like to thank everyone who has attended and supported this program. You guys have been great, and I hope you guys got the answers that you wanted. So please check for the link at our JPO Facebook page and stay tuned. For anyone who's interested to share any of our program with your family and friends, it will be on our Facebook page, Jesselton Philharmonic Orchestra. Now, I'll lead the prayer to end tonight's program. Dear Lord, we lift to you our concern for people who are more likely than others to become severely ill from COVID-19, the elderly and people with chronic health conditions. Protect them from harm and be their comfort in this time of uncertainty and, for many, preventive isolation from loved ones. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Okay, so thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the program, and I would also like to thank you again, our special guest Fu, for tuning in. Good night, everyone.